Resident Evil is widely regarded as the series that brought life to zombies in video games. No pun intended, but also pun completely intended. There's been an endless amount of media made for the series, including video games, movies, comic books, novels. You name it, Resident Evil has most likely done it. Two most recent entries, Resident Evils 5 and 6, changed their direction and didn't play to the series' horror elements. But Capcom is hoping to change that with its new entry into the series, Resident Evil 7. Hi, I'm Jacob from the Leaderboard, and we're here to give you a history on your favorite zombie fighting series. So grab an axe, mix some antidotes, sell some stuff to a weird guy in a trench coat, and get ready for 107 facts about Resident Evil. Let's get started. Fact number 1. The first Resident Evil game, also known as Biohazard depending on who you ask, started development in 1993. It ultimately took 3 years to finish development. Number 2. The first game in the series was actually meant to serve as a remake, not an original title. Capcom initially wanted it as a reboot to one of their NES titles, Sweet Home, which was based on a Japanese horror movie of the same name. Number 3. Sweet Home was a blend of both horror and RPG genres. It had a unique element where the main characters could suffer from permadeath and some characters were needed to get through certain parts. The game itself had 5 different endings and would vary based on who survived throughout the game. Number 4. Shinji Mikami was chosen to helm the creation of Resident Evil and to develop the game. The initial project was proposed by the creator of Sweet Home, I'm so sorry about some of these pronunciations, Tokuro Fujiwara, who Mikami viewed as a mentor. Number 5. Capcom wanted to make Resident Evil because they saw the potential of the PlayStation system. It was one of the first transitions for games going from 2D to 3D, and Capcom believed that it could add a whole new level of horror if games were in 3D. And they were right. Number 6. Although Capcom had confidence in the game being made, they didn't give developers any extra time or special treatment. The game itself was an uphill battle to create and was only made possible by random employees helping on their free time and Mikami's dedication to get the game done. Number 7. Yasuhiro Ampo, one of the original programmers that worked on Resident Evil, remembers the game being a whirlwind process. He recalls that the staff constantly changed and the most developers they had at one point was 80. There was also no quality control type of testing, so all the debugging was done internally by what the developers found while the game was still being developed. Number 8. It may have been a difficult development cycle, but the one who took the brunt of it was Mikami himself. At the beginning of the project, the first 6 months of development were actually a solo project because Mikami was doing almost everything by himself. Number 9. The first 6 months allowed Mikami to develop a lot of the creative end of the game. He spent the time creating character designs, concept sketches, and wrote an original draft of the script that was 40 pages long. Number 10. Mikami had his own worries on whether or not the game would sell. It wasn't because it was a somewhat new genre of video games, but rather he was worried it wouldn't do anything new. He wanted the sense of killing a zombie and fighting for your life in the game to feel like something the player had never experienced before. Number 11. Resident Evil took on a lot of influences from different forms of media, be it films or other video games, but 2 core concepts of the game were set in stone. The idea of the single setting of the manor and the static camera angles. The primary reasons for these choices were the technical limitations of 3D environments at the time, but it allowed Mikami to experiment with the game in a way that had never been seen before. Number 12. Ampo recalls that they had to use polygons in the game sparingly due to technical limitations. That's when Mikami made the decision to have all the backgrounds be pre-rendered and save the polygons for all the zombies that wanted to eat your brains. Number 13. The wall backdrops were heavily inspired by one horror film in particular, The Shining. It's often cited that Mikami was heavily influenced by The Shining when it came to designing the environments for the rooms in Resident Evil. Number 14. Both Ampo and Mikami have mixed feelings and memories on the overall legacy that the first Resident Evil ultimately created. Ampo expressed that he was happy to work on the game and that the intense development cycle is reflective on how indie development is now. Mikami believed the game would never turn into a series because horror has a specific pattern, and if it keeps showing up in other games, then players will get tired of it. He often reflects on how his life would have turned out had he continued as a creative director and not a producer, but ultimately he still feels extremely fortunate with what the Resident Evil series has brought to his life. Number 15. The beginning of the game has the player choose between using either Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine. However, early beta screenshots reveal that co-op was an idea that was considered for the game, but ultimately didn't make the cut. Number 16. All of the live-action videos that serve as cutscenes were filmed in Japan. However, the actors that appear in the videos are all American. Number 17. Fujiwara, who served as a producer for the game, projected that it would only sell about 200,000 copies because he believed the game only targeted a core audience. The original game would go on to sell well over 1 million copies. Number 18. Mikami always had the idea of multiple endings for the game because he wanted the game to feel unique. He wanted players to live their own storyline through their experiences and felt if the game was just a pre-packaged experience, then people wouldn't have as great of a memory of their time playing it. Number 19. The reason behind the title change from Biohazard to Resident Evil was due to copyright reasons. Chris Kramer, the director of communications at Capcom, knew it would be impossible to copyright Biohazard in the United States because of another flop game with the same title, as well as a New York-based band with the same name. So, Capcom held an internal company contest to think of a new title. Everyone loved the title Resident Evil, except for Kramer, who thought it was a lame title. He ultimately went with the team's choice since they loved it so much. The guy's a team player. Number 20. The game went through a strict cutting room process to make its way from Japan to the United States. A lot of the game's intro was cut due to violence, and even a scene where Chris is seen smoking was cut out. When the game was released in the US, it became one of the first titles on the PlayStation to garner an M rating from the ESRB. Number 21. Once the game was released in 1996, it was beloved by fans and critics throughout the world. It currently holds a 91 Metascore, and many critics praised it for feeling like a true interactive movie, doing things no other games had done before. Number 22. The original game was remastered in 2015 and was released on the PS4 and Xbox One. There have been several ports of the original game since its initial release that range all the way from the Sega Saturn to the previously mentioned remasters. Number 23. One of the biggest ports came to the GameCube, which completely changed the feel of the game. It was an astounding graphic overhaul and changed the entire atmosphere of how it played. Number 24. If you beat the invisible mode in the Resident Evil remake in under 5 hours, you will unlock a message from the man himself, Shinji Mikami. Number 25. Resident Evil went on to get a sequel, but the path to get the second game made was a bit of a headache. It was originally going to be called Resident Evil 1.5, and Mikami wanted it to be the end of the series. However, Fujiwara disagreed with the ending and wanted the game to serve as a bridge to a meta-series and go on to expand the Resident Evil lore. Number 26. Resident Evil 1.5 ultimately got scrapped, and only some of its original features actually made it to Resident Evil 2. The sequel came out in 1998 and had 2 new heroes to choose from, Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield. Number 27. One of the biggest changes that Resident Evil 2 brought was a change of locations. Players were no longer limited to one location and instead could discover more layers of Raccoon City and figure out the mysteries surrounding it. Number 28. The game also expanded on character selection. Depending on who you choose in Resident Evil 2, the player will face different puzzles and environments that are exclusive to the character chosen. Number 29. The game's difficulty was changed in the US to be harder than it was in Japan. The reason was that Capcom didn't want rentals of the game to bring down the overall sales. If the game was more difficult, it would force players to end up buying the game. Number 30. Resident Evil 2 also featured more violent game over screens in the US. Capcom had more freedom in terms of censorship for the sequel in America, which allowed the game over screen to actually be more violent than it is in Japan. Number 31. Despite its multiple delays and rocky development cycle, Resident Evil 2 ended up being an instant hit for Capcom. The game currently holds an 89 on Metacritic and was widely regarded as a true sequel that improves everything its predecessor did before it. Number 32. Resident Evil 2 became one of the best single-platform games ever for the PlayStation 1. It went on to sell close to 5 million copies in its lifetime on the PlayStation. Number 33. Resident Evil 2 went on to be ported to different consoles and even came back to the PlayStation 1. A new version of the game, called the DualShock version, added support for the new DualShock controllers that brought vibration and 2 joysticks to the PlayStation controller. It also had 2 CD-ROMs for the game, rather than just 1. Number 34. Resident Evil 2 was ported over to the Sega Dreamcast, rest in peace you beautiful machine, and got added features as well. One of the most notable features was that the game utilized the Dreamcast's VMU, or Virtual Memory Unit, which was an add-on for the controller that had a small screen. The game would display the player's current health and ammo without having to go into the inventory screen. Number 35. For the Nintendo 64, Capcom was able to make an impressive port of Resident Evil 2. The N64 was never known for having CG cutscenes due to its limited storage on a cartridge, but all of the CG videos are intact on the N64 version, though they are heavily compressed. Regardless, Resident Evil 2 remains one of the few N64 games to have an extensive amount of CG cutscenes. Number 36. In Resident Evil 2, the A-scenario player passes by by a store on Flower Street called Aruka's. This is Sakura spelled backwards, which is a reference to Sakura Kasugano, a character in Capcom's Street Fighter series. Number 37. Resident Evil 1 and 2 will always have a long-standing legacy, and both games ushered in the horror genre to video games in a way that had not been done before. Their releases paved the way for game series like Silent Hill, Parasite Eve, and Dino Crisis to be made. Number 38. Capcom wasted no time when it came to the development of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which was released just a year after Resident Evil 2. It was produced by Mikami and led by Hideki Kamiya, who was one of the original producers on Resident Evil 1. Number 39. The reason development was so short for Resident Evil 3 was because Capcom had been developing multiple spin-offs for the Resident Evil series, and Nemesis happened to be one of them. So, instead of being a spin-off, the team actually developed it as the third installment to the series. Number 40. The primary reason Capcom wanted the game out so quickly was because the PlayStation 2 would be launched only a year and a half after Resident Evil 3 would be released. Capcom wanted to add at least one more entry into the series on the PlayStation before making the jump to the PS2. Number 41. In Resident Evil 3, players take the helm of Jill Valentine and continue to explore the outbreak happening in Raccoon City. However, there are multiple elements in the game that hint toward what would come next in the series. Number 42. One of the newest additions to Resident Evil 3 was the concept of Nemesis himself, who is an ultra-zombie sporting a giant rocket launcher. Nemesis stalks the player throughout the game, and the player has the option to either fight him head-on or to run away entirely. This gave the game a series of heightened pace and action that had not yet been seen in the series. Number 43. One of the biggest inspirations for Resident Evil 3 came from Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Nemesis himself was inspired by the villain of the film, the liquid metal T-1000. Mikami wanted the players to feel as though they were being constantly stalked by an impending force. Number 44. In terms of combat, the game felt more fast-paced overall. There was an introduction of a full 180-degree turn, and players could also dodge attacks with a dedicated dodge move. Number 45. The game ended up being a solid entry into the series and was met with favorable reviews. It currently holds a 79 Metacritic score. Number 46. Resident Evil Code Veronica was officially announced in 1998 and would usher in something completely new to the franchise. It would be the first installment in the series to not be on a PlayStation console at first. Rather, it would launch on the Sega Dreamcast. Number 47. Although there is no number at the end of Resident Evil Code Veronica, it is meant to serve as a true entry into the main storyline. Project supervisor Yoshiki Okamoto has even stated that he believes Code Veronica is the true follow-up to Resident Evil 2. Number 48. One of the biggest changes that came with the switch to the Dreamcast was the technology now available to the developers. It was the first game in the series to feature full CG rendered backgrounds. No more static backgrounds when you're rocking the power of the Dreamcast. Rest in peace, you beautiful machine. Number 49. The game was met with very favorable reviews for its technical prowess, with a Metascore of 84. However, reviews cited how similar it felt to Resident Evil 3, which makes sense since it was being developed at the same time. It was also criticized for not really expanding on the overall story of Resident Evil. Number 50. Code Veronica may not have felt as unique as it could have, but it did feature special elements that would become a staple of the Resident Evil series. It had some of the silliest cutscenes in the series that hinted at how outlandish some of the stories would end up being in the Resident Evil franchise. Number 51. Resident Evil 0 is the next installment in the Resident Evil series. It served as a prequel to the original game, and it lets us play as Rebecca Chambers, who was in the first Resident Evil, and Billy Cohen, an all-new character introduced in the game. Number 52. One of the key features that the team wanted to include was the partner zapping system from Resident Evil 2. It allows the players to switch between the two characters at any given time and for certain puzzles or situations to be resolved. Number 53. The game was meant to launch on the Nintendo 64 since the cartridge-based system allowed for minimal load times, which made the partner zapping system work well. However, due to storage issues and graphic limitations, the N64 project was scrapped and the prequel eventually ended up on the GameCube shortly after the original Resident Evil remake. Number 54. Resident Evil 0 was well regarded among critics on a technical level for giving players a sense of immersion that had not yet been felt in previous Resident Evil games. It currently holds an 83 score on Metacritic. Number 55. Regardless of the positive reviews, many fans felt the game's stories didn't do much to add to the overall Resident Evil experience. This led to poor sales for both Resident Evil 0 and the remake of Resident Evil, which forced Capcom to make changes to the series. Number 56. Resident Evil 4's history starts as early as 1999. The game's development was first hinted at during Capcom's Gamers Day, when it was mentioned that Mikami was working on multiple Resident Evil sequels on the PS2. Number 57. Resident Evil 4 ended up having the most intense extensive development cycle that the series had seen up until this point. The official announcement came in 2002 from a conference held by Capcom, but at that point a version had already been developed and scrapped altogether. Number 58. The first version of Resident Evil 4 is commonly known as the Fog version, which showed Leon Kennedy invading some type of fortress and struggling to survive in this foggy environment. Number 59. This version of Resident Evil 4 was directed by Hiroshi Shibata at the request of Mikami. The gameplay shown as the Fog version was part of a project that was nearly 40% done at the time of its announcement. Number 60. At 2003's E3, Mikami showcased a new version of the game. This version showed Leon trying to fend off some type of infection and having visions of a man with a hook, infamously now called the Hookman, who ends up haunting and stalking Leon. This was meant to give a similar feeling to that of Nemesis in Resident Evil 3. Number 61. During the E3 presentation, Mikami felt confident in this version of the game. Before the trailer began to play, he even urged the audience to not pee their pants. Number 62. Despite Mikami's excitement at E3, he still wasn't happy with how the game felt. He thought it needed something new and exciting to bring fans back to the series. The biggest choice he made came in 2004, and that was to have the camera be behind Leon rather than be a static angle at all times. Number 63. This new version of Resident Evil 4 was shown in March of 2004, and fans were baffled. Not only did the footage show the camera angle from behind Leon, but the Hookman was completely gone. Leon was instead fighting what appeared to be possessed village people, not zombies. This version led to Mikami officially going back to being the creative director of Resident Evil and not just a producer. Number 64. In January of 2005, Resident Evil 4 was released and changed the scope of the series entirely. From the opening moments, players knew this wasn't a traditional Resident Evil by any means. There was an entirely new aiming mechanic which allowed Leon to shoot enemies in the knees and roundhouse kick them. Number 65. The new features didn't just stop at roundhouse kicks, although why would you need anything else? The enemy AI itself had been completely revamped since the enemies weren't zombies but actual people. This allowed them to climb up ladders to follow you, carry weapons, and run after you. Some of the most infamous enemies in the game are the chainsaw-wielding villagers, which instilled immediate fear into any player once they heard that chainsaw rev up. Number 66. The game blew everyone's expectations out of the water and was nominated for pretty much every award possible in the industry. It currently holds a staggering 96 score on Metacritic, with the lowest review being an 88. Number 67. Despite its near-perfect scores, the sales were only okay for the GameCube release at about 1.6 million sales. However, across all of its ports, Resident Evil 4 went on to sell over 7 million units, the most being from PlayStation 2 sales. Number 68. In July of 2005, Capcom officially announced the follow-up to Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5. The first announcement came from an official Capcom statement but had zero details on the game aside from the fact that it was in development, the heartless teases. Number 69. Jun Takeuchi, who served as a producer for Capcom's Lost Planet and Onimusha 3, helmed the Resident Evil 5 project. This was the first major entry into the Resident Evil series without Mikami directly involved in any way. Number 70. Takeuchi felt confident in the way the game looked after they showed off the first trailer for the game. He also wanted the game's story to focus on the main Resident Evil storyline and not feel like a standalone story in the way Resident Evil 4 felt. Number 71. Resident Evil 5 was the first game to come to the next generation of consoles, the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Takeuchi wanted to make sure that the game took full advantage of the new technological features and cited that Half-Life 2 was one of the bigger inspirations during his design of Resident Evil 5. Number 72. Takeuchi said that the overall development of Resident Evil 5 took about 4 years to finish. The first year was dedicated to staging and writing, while the next 3 years actually saw the development of the game. Number 73. Resident Evil 5 was also the first game in the series to feature co-op, which was a huge change in every way possible. Previous games had a second character on screen that was controlled by AI, but this was the first game to have a dedicated co-op experience both online and off. Number 74. There's actually a way to have Resident Evil 5 go back to the old camera angle from the original game. At the beginning of the Lost in Nightmares DLC, if you turn around and activate the prompt on the front door, and and do this twice, a question mark will appear. If you activate that, the game will go into the classic fixed camera mode. Number 75. Takeuchi's reasoning for adding co-op was because he wanted to keep refreshing the series the way Resident Evil 4 did. He believed that adding co-op would bring a whole new dimension to a Resident Evil game that had not been done before, the same way moving the camera behind the main character did for Resident Evil 4. Number 76. A demo for the game was released in January 2009 for the Xbox 360 and in February 2009 for the PS3. In its first 3 days alone on Xbox Live, the demo was downloaded over 1.3 million times and would go on to be downloaded over 4 million times across both platforms. Number 77. Resident Evil 5 was officially released on March 13th, 2009. Both Xbox and PlayStation fans were able to get exclusive experiences and products for their respective consoles. Number 78. On the Xbox side, Capcom and Microsoft released a limited edition red Xbox 360 that came with a copy of the game and a voucher to download Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix, which was awesome. Number 79. The PlayStation fans got a PlayStation Home experience. Oh. If the fans decided to log into PlayStation Home, they could go to the Resident Evil 5 lot, which featured the setting of the game, and players could buy Resident Evil 5 merch for their home avatars. Remember when PlayStation Home was a thing? It's okay, nobody else does either. Number 80. Resident Evil 5 was met with mostly favorable reviews. It currently holds a Metacritic score of 83, and reviewers praised it for amping up the action of 4 and for adding in co-op. However, some critics couldn't help but feel that it didn't really feel like an actual Resident Evil game. Number 81. Despite those mixed reviews, Resident Evil 5 was a huge financial success. Not only is it the highest selling Resident Evil game, but it's also Capcom's highest selling game in the company's history with over 7 million units sold. Number 82. Surprising no one at all, Resident Evil 6's conception came immediately after the release of Resident Evil 5. It began development around 2010. Number 83. Masachika Kawata, who was a producer on Resident Evil 6, stated that the game could take up to 8 years to develop. This was prior to its official announcement that development began in 2010. He also noted that it would be a completely different game from any other entry in the series. Number 84. Producer Yoshiaki Hirabayashi claimed that the Resident Evil series had undergone dramatic changes since the first game, and he wanted 6 to feel like a combination of it all. His hope for the game was to have a balance of everything that players loved, from the horror to the action. Number 85. However, Capcom soon followed up these statements, saying that the horror genre is too small of a market for Resident Evil. This was Capcom's official way of letting fans know that the game would focus more on the action and not play on the horror elements in any serious way. Number 86. The game was led by Hiroyuki Kobayashi, who was an original programmer on the first 2 Resident Evil games. Throughout development, he shared a similar view to Hirabayashi that he wanted to make a game for the fans that they would love. Number 87. Resident Evil 6 features multiple storylines, and all the storylines are also co-op enabled. This is also the first main entry in Resident Evil that features multiple characters you can play as in the same game, like being able to play as both Chris Redfield and Leon Kennedy. Number 88. Hirabayashi wanted zombies in the game from the get-go. He felt that fans had been desperately missing zombies in a main entry of Resident Evil, so he wanted just zombies galore in 6. Number 89. A demo for Resident Evil 6 came out in September 2012 on both the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. The demo was met with mostly negative feedback when it was first featured at San Diego Comic-Con in 2012, which forced Capcom to change many aspects of the game. Number 90. Upon its release, Resident Evil 6 had a bumpy start. The game officially came out on October 2nd of 2012, but that didn't stop, eager fans in Poland to steal copies of the game before its release and sell them for a high price. Number 91. Resident Evil 6, once it was legally available for purchase, was met with very mixed results. It currently holds a 74 on Metacritic, with reviewers praising it for its fun action. Most of the negative reviewers claimed that the game was just trying to do too much and that it couldn't figure out its identity, and that any sense of horror was in relation to the title of the game, and that's it. Number 92. Despite Resident Evil 6 straying so far from what fans loved of the series, it was still a commercial success. It's currently Capcom's second highest selling game of all time, right behind Resident Evil 5. Number 93. In the wake of Resident Evil 6's reception, Capcom took a long look at the series to figure out where to go next. With the impending Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, Jun Takeuchi came on board again as a producer. He wanted 7 at its core to be what Resident Evil always should be: horror. Number 94. Resident Evil 7 officially began development in February of 2014. An entirely new engine was built for the game named RE Engine, and one of the most unique things about it is that it allows for full VR integration. Number 95. To get fans excited for the game, Capcom released a tech demo to PlayStation's VR headset at E3 2015. The codename for the demo was called Kitchen, and it was meant to serve strictly as a test for VR. However, after such a positive reception for the tech demo, Capcom decided to have Resident Evil 7 be fully playable in VR. Number 96. Resident Evil 7 was officially announced at E3 2016. It was revealed that Koshi Nakanishi, who had worked on Resident Evil Revelations, would be the creative director for this new entry. Number 97. While the game was being designed by the Japanese developer Nakanishi, the narrative direction was being written by a Westerner for the first time in Resident Evil history. And that history maker is Richard Piercy, who wrote 2 of the expansion DLCs for Fear and served as one of the narrative designers for Spec Ops: The Line. Number 98. One of the biggest changes to Resident Evil 7 is that the game will be played entirely in first person, so be sure to have an extra pair of pants on hand if you're going to be playing it in PlayStation VR. Number 99. On June 14th of 2016, almost immediately after the game's announcement, Capcom made a demo available for the game called Resident Evil 7 Beginning Hour Teaser. It was available first to PlayStation Plus members on the PS4. Number 100. The demo would go on to have 2 more chapters added to it. Both of these chapters had new areas that the original demo wouldn't let you enter, and they also had new enemies to hide from. Number 101. Despite all of the added content to the demo, Capcom has stated that the demo is meant to be a standalone experience. Resident Evil 7 itself will feature a different main character than the one playable in the demo, and will have a different story as well. Number 102. A month after its release, it was clear that fans loved playing the demo. It had been downloaded well over 2 million times, and that number continues to grow with its release on the Xbox One. Number 103. Capcom has high hopes for the new Resident Evil and has sales expectations to match that. They're projecting that the game will sell over 4 million copies, which would put it just a little bit above Resident Evil 3's sales, and would have it be one of Capcom's top 10 highest selling games of all time. Number 104. For the hardcore fans out there, Resident Evil 7 does have a collector's edition that is exclusive to GameStop. For a piddly $179.99, fans will get an 8-inch model of the Louisiana house, which also serves as a music box that, when opened, plays Go Tell Aunt Rhody. The collector's edition also comes with a mannequin finger flash drive, a steelbook case, a VHS tape box, a lithograph, and a creepy note. Number 105. One final demo for the game was made public at Gamescom in 2016, and it serves as a real first look for the game's story. The demo isn't playable in any capacity other than to those who were at Gamescom, but there is footage of it online. Number 106. The demo has a found footage vibe to it, just like Beginning Hour does, and it has the player trying to hide from a creepy old lady with a lantern. The lady is later revealed to be Marguerite Baker, who was first referenced in the Beginning Hour. And number 107, Resident Evil 7 was released on January 24th, 2017 on PlayStation 4, PlayStation VR, Xbox One, and PC. Many fans look forward to the game going back to its roots of survival horror and not, well, boulder punching. Thanks for watching 107 Facts about Resident Evil. Have you managed to get your hands on Resident Evil 7 yet? Which game in the series is your favorite? Comment below and let us know. We have new videos dropping every week, so let us know what game you want us to cover next. And if you like getting more from your games, subscribe to the leaderboard, where we help you game smarter.
It's tough to top an original, so we added to the sides instead. It's the cheesy gordita crunch you know and love, now completely new. The $5 double cheesy gordita crunch box, only at Taco Bell.
Go tell Aunt Rhody. Go tell Aunt Rhody. Go tell Aunt Rhody that everybody's
Capcom. You're doing better, but not enough to get off my sin list just yet. That being said, I have no shame in admitting when I'm wrong. I thought this game was going to be a bigger abomination than William Birkin's Final Form, and it turned out to be the best Resident Evil game I've played in a very long time. So I'll go ahead and take off a sin.
I gotta get back to work. I love you, Ethan.
The main character in this game is named Ethan, and all I can think of is Ethan Mars from Heavy Rain, and his continuing search for Jason! This whole opening turns out to be a segment that takes place near the end of the game, with Mia sending a warning message to Ethan. I'm just confused as to why the game is trying to make us think that Ethan is watching this, when those are clearly feminine hands.
All I can say is that if you get this, stay away.
If you really wanted Ethan to stay away, why did you bother recording this message for him in the first place? Also, stay away? You do realize you're on a moving ship while recording this message, right? By the time you get done and send it to Ethan, he's not going to know your exact location. Speaking of which, I don't know how Mia expected this video message to reach Ethan without blowing her cover. You know, since she's a covert operative for the connections that we later find out about. Message in a bottle ideas don't exactly work when you have electronics involved. So we have a guy searching for his supposedly dead wife in a creepy estate filled with puzzles and monsters. You might think that I just described the plot of this game. I actually described the combined plots of Silent Hill 2 and the first Resident Evil game. I guess it's true that given enough time, you can rehash anything and people would neither notice nor care.
It's Mia. She's not dead, she's alive. She's back.
They found her? How?
This guy that Ethan is talking to will never be mentioned again. Ethan won't even call him for assistance when he's in danger.
Maybe it's a prank, but she wants me to come and get her.
Yeah, because when I think of pranks, I think about my wife disappearing and faking her death for 3 years. It's like putting a dead person in my thumbnail and then claiming my video to be about mental health awareness.
Where is she?
Dulvey, Louisiana.
Seeing as how this game takes place in Louisiana, I'm extremely disappointed that Capcom didn't take the opportunity to make a perfect pun by naming this game Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. You wouldn't be able to stop me from laughing my head off if that were the case. You know, a long time ago in my Resident Evil 6 video, I said that if you're going to have the camera this close to the player character, you might as well make it a first-person shooter. I didn't think that Capcom would take my advice so literally. Apparently, I need to make my sarcasm a lot more obvious. What's this? An opening sequence where I walk through a spooky brown forest? Suddenly, I'm playing Resident Evil 4. Unfortunately, I don't suck off that game like a lot of people do, so you're not getting any props. Alas, we come to the most difficult adversary that a Resident Evil protagonist can face. Gated areas, even if it is possible for them to overcome. Damn, even signs like to play the pronoun game. Jack pulls the old vanishing trick that occurs far too often in horror stories. You know that gif of Grandpa Simpson where he walks into the burlesque shop, sees Bart, and then immediately turns around and walks out? That's what any sane person would be doing right about now. This narrow hallway only makes me salty that we'll never get to play PT ever again. Game absolutely refuses to let you play any Beethoven. VHS. That was probably one of the most pathetic jump scares I've ever seen. Why the hell would anybody be in the ghost hunting business in the world of Resident Evil? As outlandish as the science has always been, it's still a series based on science, not anything supernatural.
Hey, I only work with professionals.
You're in the ghost hunting business, so you're not exactly the sharpest knife in the drawer. Finding a professional should be the least of your worries.
Make sure the sound is right this time. I don't want a repeat of Amarillo.
You're recording on VHS. Your quality is going to be piss poor regardless of what microphone you use. Speaking of piss poor quality, VHS tapes do not record and display in 1080p widescreen. I am very curious as to how this guy is able to hold a camera with his hands free like this. GoPros usually don't come in VHS format.
I was an anchor, you know?
Weekend sub, Pete. Not anchor.
What's that?
There is no way you didn't hear what Andre just said when he's standing right behind you.
Andre! Clancy, you see where Andre went?
Well, it's not a horror game unless some moron is splitting from the group.
I mean, producers, they come and go, but a good cameraman like you, Clancy?
Weren't you the one who criticized Clancy the moment he turned on his camera?
Where did you find this guy? This new guy? I'm not feeling it.
The Bakers must be masters at stealth, because they somehow managed to capture Andre and drag him through this hidden door into their boiler room without Clancy and Pete knowing about it. The Blair Witch fake-out. VHS tapes have had a long-standing history of malfunctioning whenever danger arises. This is precisely why they eventually became obsolete. Ethan apparently sounds injured when he falls off the ladder, yet later on he'll get his hand sawed off and barely have any reaction. You know what? I think it's time to bring back the Mario death transition for every single one of these jump scares, because there's just enough to add into the video without the need of a bonus round. Ah, so this is where Jared Fogle kept all his kids locked up.
Mia?
Yeah, that's not really the kind of reaction I would expect from somebody whose wife has been missing for 3 years and went through all of this trouble searching for her. Evelyn's gift is remarkable in the fact that it practically halts the aging process. Mia looks exactly the same as she did 3 years ago.
You shouldn't be here.
What do you mean? You contacted me.
No, I wouldn't. Did I?
Amnesia continues to be one of the most banal methods of storytelling in video games.
Did anyone see you? Did he see you?
Mia is apparently fond of the pronoun game.
Daddy's coming. We need to go.
You know, if after 3 years your supposedly dead wife calls anybody but you daddy, you should probably reconsider your decision to rescue her and bail immediately. That's what happens when you don't use enough Maybelline. Also, if the whole idea is for Evelyn to expand her family, why does she influence Mia to kill Ethan? I mean, yeah, it makes sense from a game perspective because we're playing as Ethan, but it doesn't make sense from a story perspective.
I can feel her clawing her way back inside of me.
There is some disturbing sexual innuendo there that I'd rather not hear. Well, fellas, if she tries to kill you, when all else fails, just teabag your wife. I hear it's great therapy to balance out your marriage. Hello everybody, my name is Ethan Winters. I've traveled all this way to find my supposedly dead wife who's been missing for 3 years and is now possessed, and I just took an axe to her neck. And I don't feel any sort of emotion. I'm starting to question my own humanity and why I bothered to rescue her in the first place.
Welcome to Xbox customer support. Para obtener soporte en español, presione.
Mia tries to pull the same trick as Jack, although it doesn't really work because Ethan has already fought her and now knows what she's capable of.
Must contain outbreak.
Mia performs the classic villain cliche of letting the protagonist live instead of taking the perfect opportunity to kill them, thus allowing them the chance to bounce back and save the day. Resident Evil continues its mannequin fetish. Game, this is not how axes work.
Welcome to the family, son.
Sure, welcome to the family, after we've lured you here and tried to kill you. Well, I guess you can't do Southern horror without a hick family being cannibals, even if they are possessed. Hey, don't look at me. I don't write the rules. The Bakers would be great in a Star Wars film.
God damn it.
Saving the hero in the nick of time cliche.
I bet it's that cop again.
Wait, again? So these phones can send and receive calls outside of the Baker estate. Yet Ethan does not do the smart thing, like call his buddy from earlier, or the BSAA. That becomes even dumber when you find a newspaper stating where Pete, Clancy, and Andre went missing. Clancy, Pete, and Andre seem to be very popular people on the internet, so their sudden disappearance would raise more than a little suspicion. Dumb limitations are also one of the great enemies of Resident Evil protagonists.
You did good, Ethan.
Zoe, right?
I kind of have to wonder, how is Zoe able to guide Ethan if she's under the influence of Evelyn, and she got infected around the same time as the rest of her family? The only reason why Mia had any sort of cognitive ability is because Evelyn favored her, and that certainly doesn't apply to Zoe. Cop shows up at a suspicious house by himself at night.
You're not listening to me. There are crazy people in this house trying to fucking kill me.
Well, all right. Let me tell you this. You don't exactly seem like you playing with a full deck yourself, all right?
He has a formerly severed hand and chainsaw wounds in the same location where 3 people disappeared. I think that would add some validity to your missing persons report.
Like I said, we've had several missing persons calls. And I can't rule out that an outsider like yourself may not be involved.
The fuck?
Hey, we gotta get the fuck out of here.
Now, first you need to tell me what you're doing out here alone in the middle of the night.
Me? What about you?
No, it's my job. Won't you do your job and tell me? Answer my questions.
What the hell is this dialogue?
Put that door back up!
Eh, it's the South. This is to be expected. I would love to know how Jack is able to put the car in reverse without touching the gear shift. He's got one hand on the steering wheel and the other forcing Ethan to press the gas. If you want a hint that Ethan is already infected and under the influence of Evelyn, he takes a metal pillar directly to the forehead, same as Jack, and yet he turns out to be okay. This game's going to try to pull an M. Night Shyamalan plot twist that's going to be more disappointing than Wesker's death.
There's something I need you to do, but I can't explain it right now.
Zoe has the perfect opportunity to explain crucial details, yet doesn't do so, because the plot doesn't demand it yet. A locked door with a Cerberus symbol. You're not fooling me, game. I know the rule of 3 cliche when I spot it. Well, 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 what do we have here? Turns out Alyssa Ashcroft actually survived Raccoon City. All but confirms that Resident Evil Outbreak is canon. I thought people completely forgot about that game. It was certainly ahead of its time, and I'm glad it got acknowledged. Boy, Mia does sure rely on the low probability of Ethan not only finding the Baker's estate, but surviving the Baker's attack and finding these videotapes so that he could see her warning message. It's almost as if she knows she's in a video game. Mia tries to surpass Casey Neistat for most compelling vlogs on YouTube. Her desperation is apparent.
You've been a bad girl!
The ability to fail a flashback recording. So what, we have sorcery now in Resident Evil? This is a series defined by puzzles based on advanced engineering, not voodoo magic.
Where do you think you're going?
I don't know why the game thought it could get away with this jump scare when Marguerite warned Mia not 10 seconds ago.
There's no way out of there, Missy! Ethan, please help me! Ethan, help me! No!
Wait, who turned off the camera? Because if it's no one, then that's some remarkable timing for the battery to go out. I just noticed that this estate has a grandma's room, yet the old lady we see throughout the game is actually Evelyn, rapidly aged. And there's no grandma present in any of the Baker family photos you come across. Game, I get what you're trying to do here, making Jack an indestructible badass, but you're never going to be able to top Nemesis. Many have attempted, all have failed. Nice try though. The fake-ass narrow crevice loading screen. Capcom, it's been over 10 years now. Stop trying to replicate RE4's success with these dollar store regenerators, who just so happen to be the only enemy you encounter in this game besides the boss battles. Finally, a Resident Evil game that knows how to make a proper Evil Dead reference. After all these years, they finally gave me what I've always wanted in a Resident Evil game, a sick-ass chainsaw duel. If we keep this up, maybe we'll be able to control our own mutated creations and have them fight inside Hell in a Cell. This serpent door is right next to the morgue after you get done with your boss fight with Jack. However, you won't get the serpent key until much later in the game, and this door doesn't lead to anywhere special. It just loops back to the beginning of the processing area. I cannot believe this game actually has a shop system, and yet they didn't bring back the merchant. Just imagine opening Zoe's trailer for the first time and the merchant pops up and is like,
"Welcome, stranger."
I would have taken off 10 cents for that. But once again, Capcom misses out on a perfect opportunity. There are exceptions to every rule.
My family and I, our bodies are contaminated. I can't leave the property unless I get it out. And the same goes for Mia.
Is there a way to get it out?
We need the serum. It should clear whatever this stuff is out of the body.
How does Zoe know how to synthesize a serum if she doesn't even know what she's curing?
We need the serum. It should clear whatever this stuff is out of the body. As long as you're not too far gone.
This too far gone status that Zoe talks about is extremely vague. Later on, you'll be able to seemingly kill Marguerite but cure Mia, even though Mia got infected before Marguerite and has been exposed to the fungus for much longer. Also, it's not a good Resident Evil game unless there's an insect boss we need to fight.
Stay the fuck out!
A flamethrower that doesn't kill insect swarms? Marguerite has terrible peripheral vision. The animation of these centipedes.
I told you to stay out of here!
Oh, so now Marguerite can be burned, even though earlier it seemed like she was unaffected by fire.
I just got done dealing with your mom and her fucking bugs. Wish you could have warned me.
She kind of did.
I just hope you can handle my mother.
Your mother?
Be careful. They'll be looking for you. What about the serum?
I haven't found any. But I did find out we need to make one. A D-series head and an arm. This can't be right.
You are correct, Ethan. Zoe already knew what she needed in order to make the serum, but she decided to be vague up until this point because the plot and game demand it. This is one of the dumbest locking mechanisms I've ever seen. You could put anything on there with equal weight to the lantern, or even try to balance it out with your own hand. This old house courtyard looks like it came straight out of the Resident Evil 1 remake.
Here I come!
I'm sure glad that Marguerite is dumb enough to let me know that she's attacking, even though she got the jump on me. Marguerite is basically Alexia 2.0. Wasp crotch. Ladies and gentlemen, AAA Gaming.
Did you find it?
Yeah, I got it. Are we really gonna be able to make serum with this thing?
You know, Ethan does kind of have a point. We know that the D-types were former bioweapons just like Evelyn, but the game never really explains how they act as a serum to the newly developed E-series.
Hey, buddy! I thought you should know.
Hey, I was told I was gonna get head from Zoe. The promises this game makes.
Now, if you want the head, feel free to come by any time and I'll give it to you. But only if you participate in a little activity I've put together just for you.
So we went from fighting Jack, a Nemesis type, to fighting Marguerite, Alexia 2.0, and now we're stuck with the Origami Killer. This game certainly blew its load way too early. Who needs guns when you can defeat the molded with their greatest enemy? Doors. I understand the reference this game is making with the Trevor and Chamberlain construction, but the Bakers renovated their house in 1992. George Trevor, the architect this company is named after, died in 1967, and I doubt that Umbrella during this time period would risk exposing themselves by contracting out under a similar name. This all but confirms that the use of VHS tapes in this game is complete bollocks, because there's no way Clancy is holding this camera with his hands clearly tied. There's no way you could have made a grenade out of a balloon, since the nails and pin would have pierced it long before you would have inflated it to a certain point. Nobody will be surprised that the cake is a lie. Man, that is some Nick Cage level of screaming. Clancy sounds like he's being transformed into Ghost Rider. These VHS tapes also have the capability of fading to black whenever the cameraman dies. Lucas is likely talking to a hallucination of Evelyn off screen. Later on, Lucas is given a serum by the connections that allows him to keep the regenerative abilities he gained from Evelyn, yet prevent him from being possessed by her, even though mind control is the whole point of Evelyn's genetic modification. So why did the connections waste the serum on a clinical psychopath who's not even qualified in the field of biochemistry?
You make that serum? Ooh, baby. You're gonna have to come through me.
Why doesn't Lucas just destroy the D-Series head once he's got it? He knows what it's being used for, yet still decides to lead Ethan on a wild goose chase. So, are these walls fireproof? Because I don't see how they look so brand new after they were set ablaze when Clancy died in here.
Motherfucker! You're supposed to die!
Well then, perhaps you shouldn't have left that happy birthday tape in the same attic as one of the key cards. You can't really be upset if someone defeats your game when you leave them a cheat. And a ticking time bomb to give them a chance to escape. Lucas leaves behind the D-Series head. You know, the one item he needs to prevent Ethan from making the serum. Zoe creates the serum in a damn NutriBullet. The serum has two different colors, even though they're both from the same D-Series. Well, it's not a Resident Evil game unless there's a goofy generic monster with obvious weak spots.
Use the serum on him!
The serum should only be able to kill the host if they were too far gone, which Jack certainly was. Yet for some reason, Jack is still alive in the End of Zoe DLC, even though he got injected with the serum here. This is why I'm so glad I waited until all the DLC was released before I made this video.
There's only one left. There can't just be one left.
Come on now, Mia. You already know that Zoe only made two, and that Ethan already used one on Jack. Pointless morality choice. That becomes even dumber when you find out there's actually a bad ending if you chose to save Zoe. Yet later on, you'll find out that Mia was working for an international crime syndicate and was responsible for transporting a BOW that ended up infecting the crew of the ship that crashed, which is the whole reason why the Bakers got infected in the first place, yet still refused to tell Ethan the truth, even though he had already arrived, thus it was pointless to keep holding secrets from him. But herp derp, we gotta roleplay as Ethan if we want to get the good ending.
My place is here. With her.
Don't be ridiculous.
You forget. I still have a job to do.
You mean the job you kept secret and could have potentially caused an outbreak?
There's the boat that Mia came with Evelyn on.
Zoe, that is a ship, not a boat.
Evie, please!
Zoe?
Evie!
Zoe? Zoe!
That was the game basically saying to you, what's that? You didn't choose the option we expected you to make? Fuck you, Zoe's dead. At least until the DLC where we actually show you the canon ending. That doesn't change the fact that this game pulled a telltale on us. Also, this all but confirms how vague this too far gone status really is. It seems to depend on how much of a person's body is mold rather than how long they've been infected. But if that's the case, how did Zoe calcify when she clearly hadn't mutated? For some reason, now we're playing as Mia, even though we left her at the dock and there was no other boat present. This is further proof that the morality choice was stupid and pointless. How did Ethan end up here inside the ship when he's surrounded by nothing but ship wreckage? That is some quality level design you got there. Discount Ouroboros. This is now the 6th Resident Evil game that has some sort of ship level. At this point, ship environments have become more oversaturated than Raccoon City itself.
Are you remembering?
What? What are you?
She is bootleg Alma Wade, and that becomes even less surprising when you find out that the narrative consultant for this game also worked on the Fear games.
I'm still in a dream.
There is no way this ship has any power after it's been wrecked for 3 years. That is a plot convenience if I ever saw one.
Watch it.
What? Why?
You need to remember. so we can be a family.
And you had 3 years to show Mia this tape, yet only now decided to do so. Because game progression, boy. The VHS recordings reach a whole new level of ridiculousness by having Mia document her and Alan being attacked by mold monsters, which would most certainly incriminate herself and be used as evidence against the connection should this tape ever be found.
She must have infected me during the attack.
It is baffling that the connections gave orders for Alan and Mia to transport Evelyn to a secret branch, yet didn't give them a serum to prevent infection should a situation like this arise.
How's it going?
She's vomiting. Far more in excess of her body mass.
Okay, sure. Don't provide any context in that sentence. Bah, what am I talking about? This is a Resident Evil game. Context is irrelevant. The machine gun continues to be one of the worst weapons in Resident Evil. Mia is capable of using a remote bomb without a detonator.
How did you get here?
Where's Evie?
Notice how Alan suspiciously avoids answering that question. I'm guessing he possesses the power ring of teleportation. It ends where it began cliche, except for the fact that Mia doesn't watch the video she recorded for Ethan, and instead goes straight to recording the warning message.
Stay away. Forget that you ever knew me.
Weird how in this context Mia seems to be in her right state of mind, yet she doesn't actually send Ethan the message here. She only sends a different message to lure him under the influence of Evelyn. In the beginning of the game, this sequence was completely silent. Now, at the same moment, there's an alarm going off in the background. Wait, is this still from the perspective of the camera that's been recording this whole time? Cause if so, how the hell did it survive being dropped into the ocean?
Can we be a family like before?
No, Evie. We were never a family. We will never be a family.
Then I don't need you anymore.
That was easy.
Honestly, this jump scare is adorable. It's like a little brat trying desperately to be spooky, and you just can't help but giggle. It's so heartwarming that I momentarily forgot what a piece of shit she was.
Maybe it still works.
What's sinful is that she's correct. It does still work, even though it clearly shouldn't, since the ship has been wrecked for 3 years now. For us classic Resident Evil fans, these are the only fixed camera angles we're ever gonna see again. Game, I think you need to ease up on the hallucination jump scares. This kindergarten level puzzle.
Hey, shh. I know. I'm not gonna hurt you.
Okay, game. So, Ethan, Jack, and Zoe are all infected with Evelyn's mold, and they're able to have this conversation thanks to a shared consciousness due to the hive mind concept. All but confirming that Jack and Zoe are still alive. Fine. You mind explaining to me what was the whole point of trying to cure them with the D-series serum if it wasn't going to be a permanent fix?
I'm no killer, son. Neither is Marguerite. No, my boy Lucas.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree with you about Lucas there, Jack. Lucas was a psychopath even before he got infected, and he remained a psychopath even after he took the serum from the connections.
So she infects you and then she takes control?
No. Not exactly, son. She forces her way into your mind, your soul. You can't fight back.
Except when it comes to Ethan, Mia, and Zoe. Ethan I can understand because he's in an early stage of infection while Evelyn is in a deteriorated state. Mia I can also understand because influencing her is against Evelyn's protocol, but Evelyn is already in a mentally unstable condition. But Zoe? How the hell is Zoe able to fight back?
Ethan, free my family.
But Marguerite is already dead. Lucas is beyond saving, and Zoe's gonna be rescued by your brother who we don't even know exists until after this game ends.
However, we did find several encrypted messages from the baker's son Lucas to an unknown third party. You can probably guess who that was.
That's just great. We've had reports he's in the abandoned mine south of the property. I'm gonna go have a look.
The Recap Radio would like to conveniently inform you about the location of Lucas so that we could put an end to this hillbilly hoedown. Somehow you're able to obtain all of Mia's items, even though she died back at the tanker and didn't give you her backpack. But that's always been the power of item box technology. Even in a Resident Evil game, the Mass Effect elevator decides to make an appearance. Just in case you weren't able to figure it out yourself, here are some encrypted messages that basically reveal the old lady you've been seeing throughout the game is actually Evelyn rapidly aged. I knew there was a reason why you weren't able to shoot her, because then it would end the game early. Wow, I never thought I would ever see HCF mentioned again. That was Wesker's task force in Code Veronica, and they finally made their way back into the plot, even if it was a little haphazardly. Not a sin, just a pleasant observation. Wait a minute, why did Lucas allow a lab to be set up here with a device to create the necrotoxin? Especially when Mia had a tissue sample of Evelyn this entire time. He already said before that he doesn't want to go back to the way things were.
Those are stupid Bet she doesn't understand that I don't want to go back to how things were before my father found y'all.
And if Ethan ever made enough necrotoxin, found Lucas and injected him, it would most certainly kill him, since he's infected with the E series. But that doesn't really matter anyway, since he's gonna be dead by the end of the Not a Hero DLC. Still a sin though. Hey there, Resident Evil game that started off with an excellent creepy atmosphere. You have now resorted into a brainless shooting gallery, which, to be fair, doesn't make you any different from most Resident Evil games, but still a sin. Game gives you a mind map after you've reached the end of the mine. What the hell was the purpose of these dolls? Really crappy foreshadowing? Because that's the only thing I can think of. Flashback within a hallucination cliche. I knew that sin was going to be included at some point. That scream. This is literally Birkin at the end of RE2. And now it's turned into the final form of Ouroboros. Mean, would have made more sense if you shot him, since you have the perfect advantage. But whatever. The final weapon we get to use in this game is not a rocket launcher, railgun, or satellite laser.
I'm Redfield.
Yes, people, that is the real Chris Redfield. I'm actually kind of glad that he looks more like his Code Veronica appearance. Hey, if that means we're going to completely disregard Resident Evil 5 and 6, then I'm supporting this character model change 100%. But that doesn't mean I'm going to ignore the fact that this is a shoehorned cameo for a DLC that quite frankly should have been part of the main game to begin with, which is precisely why it's free.
They say that when one door closes, another opens. And the only other door I can see is closed.
Actually, no, Ethan. That door is still open. But this isn't the canon ending, so here's a middle finger to you. Riding off into the sunrise cliche. Capcom, it has been over 20 years now. Pick a different ending for these games.
Happy birthday!
Welcome to the family, son.
Lucas can be described as the character who wasn't given much attention that turned out to be the main villain cliche.
Chris, did we lose him?
No. Ethan Winters has been secured. He's alive and well, considering.
Yeah, except for the fact that he's still infected with the E series. Killing Evelyn does not automatically eliminate the virus of whomever she influenced, which Ethan clearly was since he was able to heal severed limbs in a short amount of time.
And Lucas Baker? Right now, he's our only link to the connections.
Didn't your Bravo team do a thorough search of the Baker property?
A thorough search of the Baker property revealed 0 survivors. Repeat, 0 survivors. We did find evidence of a skirmish.
Then you would know about the numerous notes, photos, VHS tapes, and a laptop that clearly indicate Mia is also linked to the connections. You know, the same woman that you airlifted out of the vicinity should the player have chosen to save her, thus proving that Lucas is not the only lead. Despite Chris arriving with the team, he enters the salt mine by himself. Speaking of which, seeing as how we're playing this DLC solo, it would have been much better if we just played as Hunk, the greatest character in Resident Evil history. Plus, he's somebody who actually worked for Umbrella and never failed a mission, and it would have made up for the atrocity known as Operation Raccoon City. Sadly, this is not to be.
How many men did we lose?
3 of our best. Their last transmission was near a lab that should be just ahead. I'm going to need you to check it out.
Game, are you trying to sneak the rule of 3 cliche past me? You're dead wrong if you think so. Despite being off the juice, Chris still has his boulder punching abilities. May the meme live forever in our hearts.
Lucas, no!
Chris continues the tradition of failing to save his teammates.
Now here's the deal, Chris. You don't follow me, and I'll bounce your head off the ceiling.
Lucas, just like Mia, follows the classic villain cliche of letting the protagonist live instead of taking the perfect opportunity to kill them, thus eventually causing their own demise.
Chris, we finished analyzing the data we intercepted from Lucas. It's like we thought. The son of a bitch has been sending status reports on Evie to the connections. Find him and bring him in. We can't let this happen again.
Are you sure you just don't want to recruit him?
Sure, that sounds like an excellent idea. Apprehend and recruit a guy who just strapped a bomb to your wrist, was a clinical psychopath even before he got infected, and has no idea how to deal with bioterrorism. Especially for a new Umbrella who's trying to make amends for the actions of the former Umbrella.
Everything's all right now.
That's just what he wants you to think. I'm just the bait, and you fell for it.
Could have told Chris that before he opened the door. Video game logic. Anti-regen ammo for a new enemy that formed just 10 minutes ago. DLC tries to act like Metroid by having you reclaim lost equipment scattered throughout an area, even though Chris should have had these items equipped before he began this mission. Discount facehugger. Honestly, I expected more out of Lucas than a crappy laser trap. In fact, I was half expecting this entire DLC to be nothing but elaborate traps since Lucas is the main antagonist. That's a failure of DLC design. Chris Redfield has trouble flipping a switch.
I don't know about you, Christopher, but I'm getting real tired of playing games.
Says the guy who's been setting up all these elaborate traps.
This ends, and it ends now.
Well, I don't think so. It's about to be 4 dead soldiers in a minute.
Proceeds to give Chris 10 minutes of leeway to disarm the bomb on his hand. Something Chris should have made a priority as soon as Lucas attached the bomb to him. Yet only now decides to do something. Somebody on the design team needs to talk to Ed Boon so that he could teach them how to properly animate gore effects. Chris dips his hand into liquid nitrogen and yet it doesn't freeze.
You're slowing down, Christopher. Almost had you that time. Just how much more of this do you think you can take?
Yeah, sure. Fighting a bunch of enemies in an enclosed space. Chris has never dealt with anything like that before.
7.
Fuck.
6.
Slowest countdown from 10 ever.
We managed to intercept an email Lucas just sent out. Listen to this. Umbrella and Redfield have been taken care of.
Lucas, the genius engineer, doesn't take the time to confirm Chris's death, even though Chris has already proven multiple times that he's capable of thwarting his traps. For some reason, the Connections actually set up a lab deep in the salt mines instead of sending a different transport to bring Evelyn to their Central American branch where Mia was originally going to deliver her. Then again, this note here pretty much confirms that the Connections are a bunch of buffoons by giving Lucas the position of lead researcher, even though he has no experience in microbiology. Lucas possesses the power ring of teleportation as he appears out of nowhere. Lucas transforms into a pile of mold on the floor, yet he turns into an alien queen birthing pod on the ceiling. Also, Lucas continues the Resident Evil tradition of evil geniuses mutating into their final form in an attempt to hinder the hero from saving the day. A tradition that quite frankly should have ended with Birkin, since nobody's been able to top his monstrosity. Lucas's final form is a ripoff of the Queen Leech from Resident Evil 0.
The air contamination is going off the charts. Kill that thing before your air tank gives out.
Yeah, but Chris has a high-grade filter specifically for situations like this. How is it all of a sudden not working when it wasn't even broken? Well then, seems like you didn't need any necrotoxin after all. All you need is a regular old shotgun shell to eliminate anybody infected with the E-series.
Chris, the data transfer is almost complete.
That does not look like a data transfer which is almost complete.
Perimeter wall is up and operational.
How? You guys have only been at the Baker Ranch for a few hours, and you were searching their estate for most of that time. So why was this DLC called Not a Hero? Chris never did anything questionable, and he's pretty much the archetype hero for the Resident Evil series. Live action footage in a video game. Worst hurricane graphic ever. In the main game, this door had a locking mechanism. Here it doesn't.
They're mine now.
What?
So, did Evelyn cause that blackout? Because if not, that is one fortuitous lightning strike. I am very disturbed by the name of this DLC, End of Zoe, because all it does is remind me of Zone of the Enders and how that series has been ended for more than a decade now. Fuck Konami. Hey there, all of you who chose to save Zoe, here's another middle finger to remind you that you didn't pick the canon ending.
No! Evie, please!
So, that's it, right? That's the end of Zoe. She calcified, thus she's supposed to die. But the DLC will give you another middle finger by glossing over the fact that she's still alive. Gotta love how Joe Baker randomly stumbles onto the scene, even though he supposedly lives close by and could have helped out Zoe at any point in time in the past 3 years prior to this moment, yet only now decides to do something. Zoe, I am not a fan of your new anime princess look. You're naked, even though you had clothes on when you calcified, and instead you crystallized so that you can look like something out of Final Fantasy XIII, and nobody needs to be reminded of that game.
Tell me, what kind of help comes in a helicopter gunship?
The good kind? I get that Joe's probably one of those conspiracy theory doomsday preppers, but judging by one of the severed heads he has in his possession, he has experience fending off the molded, and a paramilitary group airdropping into the same location should not be considered a coincidence.
You see that girl back there? Look! That there my brother's little girl. My niece, you understand? And around here, family is a righteous cause.
Except when it comes to helping them out in the main plot of a video game.
She ain't dead yet, boy. So I figure you better do something about it.
Well, he would have done something if you didn't jump them and stomp a mud hole in him, when he specifically said that they were here to help.
We're here to help.
I'm not sure how mixing a critter with chem fluid turns into a first aid, but it does. Who knew that Doom Guy turned out to be a baker? Chris, Leon, Ethan, Jill, Claire, all of you, you're done for. I nominate Joe Baker as Resident Evil main protagonist from this point forward. The Boxer Effigy only gives you a pathetic 1% boost to your attack power. It's like, the DLC's not going to be that long, dude. At least give Joe some new combos so that the gameplay doesn't get stale.
It wasn't full, was it? It won't be enough. She needs a full dose to heal completely. There's more at our base.
Character dies right after spilling crucial information cliche. Swamp Thing temporarily exits Injustice 2 to appear in this DLC. Blue Umbrella manages to build a Trump wall this efficient within a couple of weeks.
Oh, come on. Not now, Gator.
The sin here is that you're playing as Brickhouse Joe Baker and yet you can't wrestle the Gators. Believe me, I tried. It's an insta-kill, just like it was in Resident Evil 5.
Okay, you'll be safe here.
Yeah, Zoe, you'll be safe inside this boat shack where Gators and Swamp Thing can easily access. Gotta love how despite the fact that Evelyn is dead, Lucas is dead, and Blue Umbrella has supposedly quarantined the entire Baker property, the E-Series Mutamycete continues to spread and mutate. Kinda makes me wonder why the Connections needed Evelyn alive if the mold can just mutate on its own.
I give my life.
Blue Umbrella is able to operate a synthesizing station in an old rusty tanker without a generator powering it.
This is it.
That actually worked. Also, how is Blue Umbrella synthesizing another cure for the East series when the two soldiers never took Zoe back to their base to make more? At this point, Zoe is the only person infected with the East series who is still alive and not too far gone, whatever the hell that means anymore. Wow, playing as an old man, power bombing mold monsters in the middle of a bayou. We have truly reached the apex of the Resident Evil franchise. We should just end the series right now. I honestly don't know how it's gonna get any better than this. Yep, totally didn't see this coming. Swamp Thing also likes to use the old vanishing trick that occurs far too often in horror stories. Earlier, the Blue Umbrella Journal said that the Mutamycete continues to spread as it comes in contact with living organisms. Yet here, a pile of Mutamycete grows on a mud path, something that isn't a living organism. Wait, if Joe eats crawfish that are in a quarantined area and the mold is already spreading, wouldn't that mean he gets infected? Somehow you're able to make a bomb with just a tree branch and chem fluid, and without a fuse.
Jack?
Surprise plot twist that the Swamp Thing turns out to be Jack is not surprising at all. But that kinda has to make one question how he's still alive after he got injected with the D-Series serum in the main game. But I guess it doesn't matter. This DLC threw out its logic the moment it started.
Mayday! We've been engaged by an unknown bioweapon. Baker House camp, under attack.
Once again, the recap radio conveniently informs us about the current situation and where we need to go. The power of item box technology strikes again. You lost all your equipment when Jack tried to drown you, yet here it all is, transported from another dimension. Oddly enough, the biggest sin of this fight is that it goes from nighttime to morning in a matter of seconds. Jack calcifies once again, but apparently that doesn't mean anything, since he survived calcification in the main game. So basically an old man with a power glove completed the task of eliminating Jack that a group of highly trained soldiers couldn't do. I think Blue Umbrella should reconsider their decision of reincorporating as a PMC.
It's you. I don't believe it. You actually made it.
Zoe, I think your accent slipped.
I told you I'd send help, and I always keep my promises.
Except you didn't promise anything.
Rise and shine, sleepyhead. It's time for supper. Eat it. It's good.
Don't some bitch wasn't no good if it hit him.
Yes.
Capcom, or as the internet likes to call them, Crapcom. Game teases spiders in the opening sequence, yet they're never actually seen in the game. And no, those mutated Jawavo don't count as spiders. The 6 in this intro looks like a giraffe is getting head from an embryo. Co-op. Helena Harper replaces Claire Redfield. Piers Nivens replaces Sheva Alomar, effectively making Chris's campaign a complete sausage fest. And no, just to be clear, we got nothing against gays. It's just that we like balance. Plotting exposition begins with a scene that actually takes place in the middle of the game cliché. Game insults the player by holding their hand and telling them where to go. Wrestling moves. Well, this isn't ridiculous at all.
Shit! Hold on!
Did I accidentally buy a Die Hard game?
Stay right where you are.
Really, Leon? After everything you've been through, you're still gonna wait for a zombie to attack you before you shoot it?
Tolox Cathedral. I'll explain everything there, Agent Kennedy.
How do you know my name? How do you two know each other?
That's Helena Harper. She's been with the Secret Service since last year.
I know they're called the Secret Service, but damn. An entire year and they don't even at least brief Leon on the fact that Helena is a fellow agent?
The virus has already spread 3 miles past the campus perimeter, and it's not slowing down. You need to hurry.
Not before we check out Tolox Cathedral.
Helena Harper is an insensitive bitch. There's a whole new virus spreading throughout the country, and all she wants to do is go to church.
So what's so special about this church? You have some sins to confess?
No, but I know this game is gonna have a lot of sins to confess.
You're gonna tell me everything once we get to the cathedral. Deal?
And if she doesn't tell you, you're gonna do what? Come on, Leon. Women are your kryptonite, remember? This deerhead isn't laughing. I wonder for whom that bell tolls for. Wait, so is this Hogwarts? The object getting knocked down for cheap thrills cliché.
Are you alright?
Clearly infected man, and yet Leon still has to question whether he's alright.
Liz. Is that your daughter?
Come on, Leon, he just told you that she was his daughter.
My daughter! She's all alone!
Our nation's future can't be the youth of America because by the time the future arrives, they won't be youths anymore. Cheap thrills that substitute legitimate horror. Did these two people die while they were blowing each other? Ah, so we do have electricity. Well, how come the elevator didn't work earlier?
The power's out.
Leon just stands here and watches these guys cry for help, but only decides to make a move once it's already too late.
Let's go.
Leon, it's too late.
Shoddy camera movement. Geez, if you're gonna have the camera this close, you might as well make it a first-person shooter.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
I've got a bad feeling, cliche. Stupid AI.
Wait.
Not now.
This way.
Not now.
Fall back.
Not now.
Should've known better.
The alarm that's gonna set off and attract the zombies, cliche. The obvious keys that are hidden above the visor, cliche. Scene does not contain a makeout session. Down in the sewers and no spiders to be found.
Leon, Helena, we'll be out of contact when you're in there.
And yet you still have reception in the sewers. Aw, look at them textures. The stupid civilian who puts our protagonist in danger, cliche. Oh look, no bite marks. Random vehicle crash number 1. Random vehicle crash number 2. This horrendously animated news station.
Transmission was received from the vessel before its disappearance.
Yasuichi? This guy doesn't even look infected. This asshole. This guy's gun jams and is in a gun shop filled with SMGs, pistols, shotguns, and rifles, yet decides to grab his girlfriend's pistol instead. Honey Boo Boo zombies. Mission objectives that point out the obvious. No. Physics say that these two should have died right there and then.
There's a secret door by the altar that leads underground.
If you know about the door, then it's not a secret.
There's more here than meets the eye.
The Transformers, more than meets the eye.
Toll the 5 bells loud and clear, and thus the true path shall appear.
Simple riddles. Scripted boss battles.
Wish I believed God were looking out for us right now. But I think we're on our own.
That's because God doesn't exist. Capcom further insults the player by presenting an embarrassingly easy puzzle.
Nice security system. You just have to punch in the numbers on the doors.
VHS?
Why does everything have to be complicated?
Why do you have to be complicated?
Enough with the mystery. What the hell is going on here?
Let's just get her out of here.
You take care of her. Leave any hostiles to me.
Another way you can tell this game sold its soul is that Leon refers to the zombies as hostiles instead of just zombies. Holy crap, did Ada Wong get plastic surgery?
What the hell is going on here?
It's complicated.
Ada uses Facebook relationship status to describe their current situation.
Here.
A ring?
Don't get the wrong idea. It'll make sense later.
Well, you, Capcom. Thanks for ruining my dream of seeing Leon and Ada getting married one day.
Just stop it, Deborah! This isn't you!
Oh, really? What gave it away? Groundbreaking video game series rips off the minecart chase sequence from Temple of Doom.
We're up against the people who really run this country.
Who, the Illuminati? Shadaloo? The lizard people? Zombies that jump? Are you f***ing kidding me? Helena is literally in the jaws of the shark and she's not being ripped to shreds? Plus, how in the hell did they manage to hold their breath this long through all that chaos? Quick time events. Seriously? You couldn't just swim underneath the gate? Ah, the old barrel that blows up the shark cliche. Is this seriously the only way we know how to kill sharks in video games?
He's sterilizing the area.
And destroying the evidence.
Man, Simmons is stupid. We find out later that he plotted to have the president killed because he was going to disclose the truth behind the Raccoon City incident to the public. Yet he's causing the bombing of this area and somehow thinks that's not going to attract the attention of the media. Capcom further insults Claire Redfield fans by having Helena dress in very similar clothes. Ah, I see that we're breaking the law of physics. Again. More QuickTime events. Now where the f*** did this asshole come from? This close in this shot? This close in the next? Thank you, Fruit. Epic showdown between Chris and Leon only lasts for several seconds. These agents can't hit a target.
Are you here to avenge the president? Is that it? You fool. Had he disclosed the truth behind Raccoon City, the U.S. would have lost all its authority, and the global political order would have collapsed.
So to avoid one possible disaster, you create another, no matter how many people die?
He had to be stopped!
So why didn't you just assassinate him the conventional way, like everyone else? I mean, was another viral outbreak really the smartest way to go? No. The answer is no. Bullet time.
Is it over?
Yeah. It's over.
Characters say it's over when it's really not cliche.
What is that?
It's a bird! It's a plane! It's Superman!
Oh, shit!
Well, the virus was on a roll a minute ago, but now it wants to take its sweet old time spreading.
Where did all the ash come from?
Probably from a missile.
No, it came from Dante's Peak. Dawn of the Dead inferiority music.
This is as far as I can get you.
And apparently, for the purposes of this game, it's also as far as the fog will spread. Continuity fail. Did we mention that this is basically a ripoff of Independence Day? Yeah, I think we did. Still, we're still going to count it as another sin. Oh yeah, I'm not going to crash this helicopter at all while I'm protecting Helena and not paying attention to my maneuvering. There is no light source that can be making this shadow. You see, it's not coming from this light because it's shining directly below, and it's not coming from here because it's just a reflection of a light that should be above it. So, composition fail. More continuity fail. So, am I playing Jurassic Park now? Well, I guess I am playing Jurassic Park. Also, turret cliche. T-Rex cartwheel?
She's more than just a friend, isn't she?
You got what I need, but you say he's just a friend.
Are they seriously just climbing up a steel rope at this height?
Come on, Leon. Catch up.
I always get stuck with the bossy one.
Shit! Oh, gee, Leon, I wonder why that is. Couldn't possibly have anything to do with the fact that you let them walk all over you. Leon doesn't get injured by this barrage of projectiles. Wait, so they actually have each other's numbers?
Brando Fly. Super Brando Fly.
Head for the chopper.
Get to the chopper! Fatality.
Get the f*** out of here. Plus, wasn't the umbrella reference already seen earlier in the game?
That's for my sister.
What about all the other people he murdered, you selfish bitch?
What? But I assisted in the attack.
The investigating commission have reviewed the evidence and feel it unjust to hold you liable for Simmons' crime. They will also not be disclosing their findings to the public.
Well, this isn't contradictory at all. First, we let Helena get off easily, even though she assisted with the outbreak. But then we're going to keep this incident secret from the public, which is the same thing that Simmons wanted to do with the truth behind the Raccoon City incident. That we killed him because...
Listen, sweetheart. You're here to pour drinks and look pretty. So how about you shut your mouth?
Chris Redfield is sexist.
The BSAA has arrived on the scene.
Chinese reporters, in China no less, reporting in English. This Juavo is able to regenerate its head, which was blown off, but is killed when Chris performs a neck breaker. Inability to change the camera here.
Still trying to wrap my head around what I'm seeing here.
Really, Chris? After everything you've been through, this should just be another day of work for you.
Is he always this awesome?
Actually, he is. Except, of course, when he's going through roid rage.
How many of our men are dead because of that bitch?
Did we mention how bipolar this cover system is?
Sherry Birkin, you were in Raccoon City.
How do you know that?
Claire,
Wait, are you Chris?
my sisters told me all about you.
More references to Claire, yet she's not in the game.
He's no threat to the PSAA.
Unless someone pays me to be.
What did you just say?
Piers and Jake pissing contest. Game cliche number 14. A group of dumb bastards who, instead of running or shooting, stand and gawk at the giant monster alien BOW thing.
Well, you jarheads all look the same to me, pal. Sorry.
You've got to be kidding me.
What? You mad, bro? Obvious trap, but they still fall for it.
My name's Ada Wong. They held me hostage.
C-virus.
17 years of Resident Evil canon, and Chris somehow doesn't know of or hasn't heard of Ada Wong by now.
We found one of the staff. We're turning to the foyer now.
Chris Redfield doesn't know how to pronounce foyer.
Everyone get to the second floor! The foyer's too dangerous!
Random Soldier doesn't know how to pronounce foyer.
The woman, she's gone. Finn! I don't know what happened. She was here a second ago.
Actually, she wasn't. She was gone long before this sequence even started. See? These needles managed to avoid passing through these wide open bars and penetrating Chris and Piers. For the sake of this game's pacing and plot, Finn manages to mutate into a full-grown BOW within mere seconds. I know Chris is badass and all, but he should have easily been killed by this onslaught of attacks. Penis Flamethrower. Save a horse, ride a panda. Grasshopper Juavo. This overpowered chopper. Insert Black Hawk Down joke. Here.
Damn it! Why won't this thing show itself?
Damn it, why isn't the enemy throwing itself to us on a silver platter?
I'm not gonna rest until we have her head on a stick.
Oh, okay, whatever you say, Bateman.
And what'd the other part of him think?
What her head would look like on a stick.
Wait! We've got no choice. We have to kill him.
I guess Chris forgot what happened when Finn mutated.
What happened to the legendary Chris Redfield, huh? What happened to you? It's a good thing Finn's not around to see you this way.
This would have made for a bigger emotional impact and make me care about the game more if Piers said, "It's a good thing Jill isn't around to see you this way."
Ada's just playing with you. When are you gonna realize that?
I'm not stupid enough to fall for her bullshit.
Yeah, you are. Wanted to see her dead earlier, but now you won't even wound her. I know the showdown is necessary and all, but how did Chris, nor Piers for that matter, notice Leon out of their peripheral vision before his attack? So, what is this now? Resident Evil? Twisted Metal 6? Are these assholes really unable to hit us at this range? Oh no, it's Resident Evil, Need for Speed.
Deja vu, boys. Raccoon revisited. But this time, it won't just be one city. It'll be the whole world.
Why do I feel like I've heard this before?
Every day, humans come one step closer to self-destruction. I'm not destroying the world. I'm saving it.
Oh, it's because I have. This briefcase doesn't have a safety lock. Groundbreaking video game series rips off the facehugger from Alien. Geez, are we playing Ace Combat now? I know it's for the sake of the game, but why would these assholes give us 4 minutes before launching the missile? A truly diabolical villain leaves no room for error.
There's irony for you. A man who spent his entire life trying to destroy the world, and now his son is the only one who could save it.
And here I am coming to rescue him.
The man who killed his father. Like I said, irony.
I don't know. Maybe it's fate.
Nope. Piers is right. It's irony.
It's about time someone took my place. I'd be honored if it was you.
I don't think I'm ready for that.
You made it this far, haven't you?
Not so subtle foreshadowing. Infection spreads throughout the entire Eastern Hemisphere within seconds.
If it ever comes down to you and me, it'll be me. Got it?
Very doubtful. If Chris can kill Wesker, who is superior to you in every way, then you don't stand a chance. Another example of game cliche number 14. And somehow it isn't constricting Piers or Chris to death.
Warning. The self-destruct system has been activated. All personnel, evacuate immediately.
Jill!
Aww. and I was just starting to like Piers. Groundbreaking video game series rips off the ending of BioShock. Carrots and steak. Leon's alternate costume in Mercenaries mode isn't Dante's costume from Devil May Cry 2. Sherry's schoolgirl uniform is not available in the main campaign. Agent isn't Hunk. Big Daddy. Non-existent cubicle phone technology. Ada isn't wearing her signature red dress. I love Ada and all, but this grapple gun gimmick is basically a ripoff of Batman in Arkham Asylum. This is the only real puzzle in the entire game. Ada climbs up the ladders, even though she has a grapple gun. Stupid questionnaire needed to advance the level.
How do you plan to atone for your crimes?
These acrobatic moves cannot be performed in actual combat.
All right. Ready or not, here I come.
Didn't know we were playing hide and go seek. Money shot! Aw, we meet again.
Aberration detected.
Aberration detected? So the game is basically dictating how you play it now? VHS again.
Alpha to HQ. We got a visual on Ada Wong. We're in pursuit.
Convenient radio transmission to advance the plot device. I guess this is that Zombie Express Leon was talking about.
Could be better.
Yeah, there's totally just going to be an open door on this tanker. No security lock on this case either.
Yes.
I'm real Ada. I don't need help from anyone.
Oh hey, it's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Hell will rise and chaos will reign!
Carla adopts the mad scientist who wants to destroy the world cliche.
I, Ada Wong, will be queen of the new world!
A new Genesis is at hand, and I will be the creator.
You're on your own now, you two.
Ada says this, and not 10 minutes later is back to help them with Simmons. Ada inadvertently perfectly describes this game. This tedious boss battle.
Okay, last item on the list. Eliminate all traces of the theft of my identity.
Now, why would you eliminate traces of your identity theft? Wouldn't you want to keep that evidence to prove your innocence just in case you were ever caught and charged with bioterrorism?
Finally come back to me. You were never really.
Seeing as how Simmons was the overseer of Carla's transformation to Ada Wong, he should be able to recognize his own creation and the fact that he's talking to the real Ada Wong and not Carla.
Appreciate the gesture, but I'm a big girl. I can handle this one alone.
Mama, I'm a big girl now.
Ada's not giving Leon a BJ in this sequence. I mean, come on. Just look at the position of her head.
We're beyond sympathy at this point. We're beyond humanity.
And yet you act like you're on your period when you destroy this lab, revealing your most emotional scene to date. This is Ada Wong, people. Ada Wong doesn't show emotion. This Juavo is a dick to apples. The U.S. National Security believes it's a good idea to send a pretty blonde white girl on a solo mission to apprehend the son of Albert Wesker in a remote part of the world where a civil war is breaking out and expect her to survive. I mean, she does survive, but we're still calling it a sin.
Right now, we're racing against a global bioterrorist attack, and we needed a vaccine yesterday.
So I'm guessing you and your superiors don't understand the concept of deadlines and contingency plans? You know, always plan ahead and prepare for the worst?
$50 million.
What?
Cash. Non-negotiable.
Jake doesn't ask for a higher ransom. More wrestling moves. Begin Uncharted sequence now.
Not one of those roided out freaks, you morons!
No shit!
This is exactly what most players said when they've reached this point in the game. Haha. Nemesis, you are not. More mission objectives that point out the obvious. You know, just in case you wanted to stand there like an idiot and get mauled. Creepy mannequins. Ah, deja vu.
Mr. Mueller is requesting compensation for his cooperation. $50 million.
In cash. You forgot to mention that.
Yes, we have a deal.
Well, that was easy.
That was easy.
You are terminated.
More turret cliches.
What do I do?
Pull it out.
Said no straight woman ever.
The data's gone.
What data?
Your data. Your blood analysis, your genome, everything that we need to make a vaccine.
Now, why exactly do you need the data on Jake when you have Jake?
So this data you need to find, it's about me, isn't it?
She just told you that, dumbass.
Okay, one more to go. I bet you'll be a real pain in the ass to find.
Oh yeah, it's going to be really hard to find because the screen is literally telling us where it's at. Snowmobiles.
I'll go get help. It can't be that much further to the rendezvous.
Oh, wait!
Sherry's blonde moment.
The people who saved me, Leon and Claire, are the closest friends I've ever had.
Claire is that BSAA guy's sister.
More references to Claire, and yet she's not in the game. Boy, Capcom really likes sticking it to Claire Redfield fans. Ustanek all of a sudden needs these bats to detect anyone, even though he's seen and heard perfectly fine before. Jake is a woman beater.
Not so tough now, are you?
Jake and Sherry aren't even remotely scared of Ustanek. I mean, Sherry I can understand because she's been through this kind of stuff before, but still. It's not every day you get a murderous, indestructible, monstrous